think we can start. Donc, merci tout le monde d'être là. Donc, nous allons démarrer notre session. Donc, c'est une conférence avec plusieurs intervenants, avec plusieurs sous-thèmes. Le thème général, c'est sur l'inclusivité et le genre. Et dans cette session, nous allons rapporter les activités du Gender Working Group dans le cadre du GRC, donc le Conseil recherche, le GRC. Donc c'est une session avec une première intervention de notre consoeur venant du Brésil, Madame Ana Maria Almeida, de la Fondation en recherche de Sao Paulo. Elle va nous présenter la brochure élaborée par le Gender Working Group concernant le genre et l'inclusivité, où il y a des études de cas. Elle va revenir sur le processus d'élaboration. Il y a une intervention sur le genre et l'inclusivité par les conseils en recherche qui sera présentée par notre collègue M. Jakalia Sanogo de la CRDI. Après cela, il y aura deux panels, deux tables rondes. Une table ronde sur la promotion de l'égalité et du statut des femmes dans la recherche, pratiques et initiatives africaines, qui sera animée par notre collègue Jemina Onsare, de la National Research Funding du Kenya. La deuxième table ronde sera animée par notre ami et collègue Dr Dorothy Ngila, de la National Research Funding de l'Afrique du Sud, NRF. Elle va parler de la promotion de l'égalité et du statut des femmes dans la recherche, pratiques et initiatives internationales. Après, il y aura une pause café. Nous allons revenir à la salle vers 16h, où nous allons assister à la troisième table ronde, qui va parler des expériences sur l'inclusivité dans les financements. Elle devait être organisée, animée par Madame Anne Weston, apparemment qui n'est pas là, il y aura une autre personne certainement. Et la troisième table ronde sera suivie de discussions et la dernière séance sera consacrée aux observations finales qui seront présentées par Madame Eunice Moutengue. Donc sans plus tarder, pour rattraper un peu le temps, nous allons donner la parole à Ana Maria Almeida. Ana Maria, vous avez la parole.
So, thank you, Suke, and good afternoon, everyone. I'd like first to thank you for the opportunity to present the work done by the Global Research Council Gender Working Group in this meeting. It is such an honor and a great pleasure to be here with you. I'd like also to add that we have here other members of this group, Dorothy Ngila over there, Dr. Maha Kayat at her side, Dorothy from South Africa and Dr. Maha Kayat from Saudi Arabia, and Professor Suke from Senegal herself. So, gender equality has been a long-standing concern in the Global Research Council. The Gender Working Group is the materialization of this concern. It was formed in 2017 as a result of the positions held in two documents. The first one was the Statement of Principles and Actions for Shaping the Future, Attracting and Retaining Best Talents in All Their Diversity, that was endorsed by the GRC participants in 2014. In endorsing it, the GRC agreed that it was their role as science granting councils to contribute to advance equal opportunity in research and develop mechanisms that encourage people from all backgrounds to pursue scholarly and scientific careers, contributing to research excellence. After the Research Councils UK at the time and the Science and Engineering Research Board of India commissioned a survey report of the gender equality policies and practice of a selection of GRC participants as a contribution to the Global Research Council annual meeting in Delhi in 2016. The findings of this survey and the discussions it provoked led to the production of the Statement of Principles and 10 Actions promoting the equality and led to the the production of the Statement of Principles and 10 Actions promoting the equality and the status of women in research. This document took under consideration that the national environments in which GRC participants operate increasingly include expectations or requirements in relation to equality and diversity. On a national scale, policies are often focused on ensuring fair and open access for all groups in a society. In a research context, this concept may be expressed as the ability to attract and retain the best talent into research. In order to do so, a set of 10 actions was presented in this document, and a gender working group was created to assist with the sharing of information and data among participants. Since then, the gender working group activities and strategic planning have been guided by the overarching consideration adopted by the 2016 Statement of Principles and Actions. First, the promotion of women in the research workforce, and second, the integration of the gender dimension in research design and in the analysis of research outcomes. A call for action was one of the results of the annual meeting of 2018 held in Moscow. GRC participants declared themselves custodians and advocates of the Statement of Principles subscribed in 2016. It was decided then that gender would become a cross-cutting theme in regional meetings going forward, and that each GRC participant organization will define a champion for the gender working group. Besides that, it was decided that the Gender Working Group Action Plan for 2018 and 2019 would include the development of effective practice case study and a better understanding on how the participant agencies were dealing with gender inequality by expanding its work on data. As a result, in the year leading to the 2019 annual meeting, sessions on gender in research were part of all regional meetings. We had first the Americas meeting in Guatemala, then the Asia Pacific meeting in Tehran, the Europe meeting in Vienna, the Middle East, Northern Africa meeting in Cairo, and then the Africa meeting in Abidjan. A case study booklet was launched globally, and we are very happy to announce that it's being launched here today as well. My friends will start distributing it now, and we will have the opportunity to discuss the cases, showcases there, in the following discussion. So, in order to have this booklet prepared, all GRC participants were invited to submit case studies, and the booklet in the end contains 53 cases from 28 countries covering all 5 regions. The cases are organized in the 10 sections shown here here, that correspond to the 10 actions proposed in the Statement of Principles and Actions Promoting Equality and the Status of Women in Research. The 10 sections contain examples of policy frameworks, action plans, and awareness-raising activities, gender-related data collection, analysis, and reporting, examples of progress towards gender-based goals, examples on how to consider research opportunity instead of track record only when evaluating CVs or research outputs, equality and diversity training, on addressing systemic and institutional barriers, on strategic programs encouraging gender equality, or promoting family-friendly policies and practices in relation to caregiving obligations. And finally, examples of policies that recognize the advantages of considering the gender dimension in research and encourages its development. This work culminated in a fruitful conversation during the annual meeting in São Paulo, where the work already done was discussed. There was first a gender dialogue with HORCs on equality, excellence, and impact in the research system, and then a dialogue on adding the gender dimension in research design in the analysis of research outcomes. Some new ideas were brought to the table and guidelines were. As a result, for the period 2019-2021, the Gender Working Group is advancing in 4 work streams. First, it is undertaking initiatives to assist GRC participating organizations in their mission to support high-quality research by integrating the gender and diversity dimensions in research design and content, by also preventing bullying and harassment at funders and funded institutions, and also by promoting equality, diversity, and inclusion beyond gender equality. The outcome expected from this is to produce key recommendations and consultation at the annual meeting in 2020 in Durban. Second work stream is to continue to advocate through the 2019 regional meetings and in the 2020 annual meeting. We will try by doing strength our connections with participant organizations. And third, we would like to continue to collect case studies for a possible future second edition of the booklet and for the online platform that is being in the planning. To expand the work on data collection, about which I would like to invite my colleague Dorothy Nigila to explain more. Thank you.
Good afternoon, colleagues, and thank you very much, Ana Maria. Ana Maria neglected to mention that she is the co-chair of the Gender Working Group of the GRC. So I would like to just acknowledge that your presence here is really incredible. In terms of the focus on data, we have done some pilot work that showed us within the GRC context that GRC participating organizations were more interested together to understand the trends with which we are engaged for data collection, analysis, and reporting. So this working group of the GRC is launched a survey and requesting data on trends, not raw data. I just want to clarify, not raw data. We're requesting trends by GRC participating organizations to understand a little bit more on women in research, what data are you collecting? Gender dimension in research, what data are you collecting? Sexual harassment and bullying policies, do you have these in place? Do they cover just the organization, or do they also cover the people that you fund? So we are asking all the GRC participating organizations to please assist us in completing the survey. We will definitely share a little bit more information about this in an email that will come after this. We are asking you to report, the survey does not ask you to report on actual numbers, but just the types of data you collect to understand trends across the GRC. Most of the questions are yes and no questions, about 12 sections on those 3 key aspects that I've mentioned. And the expectation is that we will launch a booklet that really speaks to these trends at the next GRC annual meeting in 2020 in Durban, South Africa. That is the link. We have shared that with everybody. We will do that again. We have a deadline of 15 December, and we are very grateful that you're able to share with us the data that you have. And with that, I would like to share with you the contacts again of the Africa region. Dorothy and Suke Diatine. This is missing in the Africa region. Together we work to support the GRC Africa region. And of course, the co-chairs of the GRC Gender Working Group are Anna Maria and Roshni Abedin. Thank you.
Merci Dorothy. Elle a pris la parole sans la présidente parce qu'elle elle est co-présidente de cette séance, donc on organise la séance en même temps. Merci Anna Maria pour votre exposé très concis et très riche en enseignements. Je veux pointer deux niveaux que vous avez pour lesquels vous avez communiqué, c'est concernant la promotion des femmes dans la recherche. Les femmes doivent participer dans la recherche pour qu'il y ait une bonne l'excellence dans la recherche, que la promotion de la recherche dans le monde globalement soit une réalité. Vu le nombre des femmes, on ne peut pas promouvoir une recherche au niveau mondial sans la participation de cette frange de la participation. C'est pourquoi j'ai bien apprécié le fait qu'elle dit qu'il faut que les femmes participent dans les travaux de recherche. Donc les femmes aussi doivent être intégrées dans les travaux de recherche. L'aspect genre doit être ressorti dans les travaux de recherche et aussi dans les résultats de recherche. Ça veut dire qu'il faut que des sujets de recherche concernant les femmes soient bien développés. Voilà, donc globalement, je pense qu'on va revenir sur certains points dans les discussions, surtout concernant les perspectives qu'elle a rappelées, surtout les 4 directions dans lesquelles nous devons aller, notamment sur l'excellence en recherche, l'intégration du genre, vraiment à tous les niveaux, comme je viens de le dire, comment prévenir l'harcèlement sexuel aussi, et comment promouvoir un financement de la recherche pour les femmes. Donc, encore une fois, merci pour la qualité de votre exposé. Le prochain intervenant, c'est M. Jakalia Sanogo de l'IRD. Si vous êtes prêt, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Suke. Thank you very much. I don't have a presentation, so I'm going to just talk. Just speak and set the scene. After I've spoken, if there's any question, please address the question to Dorothy. Yes. Good. So that being said, I'm going to talk about gender and inclusivity in Science Granting Council's initiative, which is going to be a kind of contribution to this dialogue between the AGCI and the GRC. As a key intermediary in national science system, councils can be, or should I say, are important catalysts in the participation of women in STI, science, technology, and innovation, and increase consideration of gender and diversity dimensions in research and innovation through, for example, deliberate policy actions. To this end, SCCI is working to develop a project which aims at providing support to the councils for them to become gender responsive and inclusive organizations which support research and research environments that are gender transformative, and Dorothy will explain that later. And also, which advocate for STI policies and practices that are gender transformative and inclusive. So let me set the background for this project. For it, we are going to launch very soon, maybe next week, a call to recruit a CTA, collaborative technical agencies, which will work with the councils. So in background, I can say that the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, various UN and other high-level fora on women, African Union Agenda 2063, the Continent Science, Technology, Innovation Strategy for Africa, STISA 24, and frameworks championed by organizations such as UNESCO are instruments that advocate a greater and deepened effort to support gender and inclusivity. Women researchers and other groups remain underrepresented in STI programs across the human capital development and leadership pipeline, both in Africa and globally. And I was struck one day, I had a cousin who wanted to come and study in Kenya. So I went to deposit application form at the university. And then I entered this campus, and I saw there were more women than boys. I was so shocked. So when I came to the office that day, I went to talk to the regional director, Catherine Toure. I said, Catherine, I was shocked by something today. There are more women in the university that you go across the campus, you see more young girls, young women than boys. I said, okay, so where is the leak? Why can't we see, aren't we seeing them, in all these different positions in doing research? So I think this is something that we need really to reflect on and see where, we are losing them. So now adopting equal opportunities and inclusivity approaches ensures that diverse group of people can participate in the research and in innovation landscape. STI can only lead to better transformed lives for all when the concerns, abilities, and needs of both males and females and gender diverse groups are taken into consideration throughout the research and innovation process. We have been saying that. I think it's time that we start really acting on that. And that's what we think that this project will also address. And that, I think, we're expecting that after today, the talk we're going to have today, will really start acting in that direction. So one example that we can give so that, we start encouraging this is we've seen a lot of action regarding the sex and gender dimension in research design and content, as well as internal institutional policies and practices. An example is the Global Research Council's GRC 2016 Statement of Principle and Actions on Promoting Status and Equality of Women in Research. Another is the IDRC Equality Statement adopted in 2019, which is intended to help the center, that means IDRC, to achieve equality in all aspects of its work. So now, the councils, we know, have a central role in national STI systems, with function ranging from funding research, grant and scholarship, infrastructure development, uptake and research, and uptake of research funding, the collection of national data on research and development, STI advocacy and policy advice, and management of scientific collaboration on behalf of the state, just to name a few. So it will be critical that we have the capacity to advance gender and inclusivity in the execution of these functions. So it's already great that we have some achievement, and I will speak about some of them. In fact, we do have progress already made through the SCCI, the Science Granted Council Initiative, since its inception in 2014. So one, the SCCI advocated for greater focus on ways to support gender consideration in the work of the councils, culminating in the adoption of a gender mainstreaming framework and action plan in 2018. And this framework was presented by my colleague Lois Ochanda in June at the SCCI regional meeting in Addis Ababa. So the framework addressed how the CTAs were mainstreaming gender into technical support to the councils, notably through training, curriculum, and delivery, and in the selection of training participants and speakers, which is very critical. The SCCI has worked with the CTAs and councils to involve them in discussion about gender and inclusivity. For example, at the Sarima Dialogue on Gender and Diversity in 2017, and at the 2018 SCCI Annual Forum, and I just talked about the 2019 SCCI Annual Regional Meeting in Addis Ababa, they talked about how do you make sure that we mainstream gender into the system. Many councils also participate in the Global Research Councils, which in 2016 endorsed the statement of principle and actions promoting the quality and status of women research that my colleague talked about now. So, and some case studies on how African councils promote the equality and status of women in research were collected as part of a global report titled Supporting Women in Research Policies, Programs and University, an initiative undertaken by public research funding agencies, which was launched in 2019 at the GRC annual meeting. So the last that I want to talk is this benchmarking survey of the SCCI councils conducted by the Association of Commonwealth Universities as part of implementing SCCI Theme 1, which collects and analyzes gender disaggregated data with a specific focus on the number and size of grants and councils staff. So these results were shared individually with the councils. So now in conclusion, I would say that in SCCI 2, with the assistance of the collaborative technical agency which will be recruited, it is our intention to support the councils to initiate and deepen various forms of strategies, activities, studies, and additional mechanisms to implement cross-cutting work on gender and inclusivity. Thank you for your attention.
Merci, Jakalia, pour cet exposé. Vous avez essayé de nous faire gagner du temps. Merci pour la concision. Et sans plus tarder, nous allons démarrer la table ronde. La première table ronde qui sera animée par Jemima Onsare, notre collègue du Kenya. Et dans cette table ronde, ils vont parler de la promotion de l'égalité et du statut des femmes dans la recherche, pratique et initiatives africaines. Jemima, vous pouvez venir avec votre équipe qui sera constituée d'Annette Ouattara, du passeresse de la Côte d'Ivoire. Annette est là. Vous pouvez venir et vous installer au fur et à mesure. Nous avons aussi Adélaïde Asante du Ghana, du ministère de l'Environnement, de la Science et de la Technologie et de l'Innovation. Autre intervenant, c'est Peter Ndemerene is not here, I think. No. Amidou Tamboura, donc À la place de Amirou Tamboura, nous allons avoir sa jeune collègue Amina du Fonds RID du Burkina Faso. C'est le Fonds national pour la recherche et de l'innovation du Burkina Faso. Donc, Jemima, vous avez la parole pour diriger votre séance.
Thank you very much for the work well done, my dear colleague. I think we are missing someone from Uganda. Uganda, is the Uganda in the house? Ishmael was with us. Hopefully he will join us. Sorry? Ishmael, you are supposed to be with us here. Please join us. Well, I think the pace has been set by our two previous presenters. That is Ana Maria from Brazil, and our colleague, your name is just going, Jakalia. And to put the presentation now into perspective, we would like to get the life experience from the case studies from the African perspective, whereby we'll take this panel discussion into two segments. The first one is to hear the experiences from the various countries. And the second segment will now zero in on the forthcoming program, that is the SGCI second phase, whereby one of the area of focus is gender inclusivity. And we would like to hear also from our fellow granting councils on how prepared they are in taking up the challenge of trying to incorporate the gender aspect in their projects that they will be implementing. And for that case, they will be required to give or come out with interventions that they expect the science granting initiative coordinators to take up and support the process. So to begin with, I would like to give this opportunity to my colleagues in 4 minutes. Could you share with us the experience you have from Côte d'Ivoire in terms of gender inclusivity in promoting women in research?
Okay, merci Jemima. Bonsoir à tous. Merci pour l'opportunité que vous nous donnez de présenter un peu l'expérience du PASRES concernant l'inclusion de la dimension genre dans le financement de la recherche. Bon, il faudrait dire d'abord que pour le PASRES, la promotion de l'égalité des sexes dans le domaine de la recherche est essentielle pour parvenir à un développement durable et équitable. L'inclusion du genre dans la science, particulièrement l'intégration, où le soutien des femmes devient à ce titre une nécessité à ne pas occulter et à prendre en compte dans les différentes activités de recherche que nous menons. Et en tant que partie prenante, la femme doit avoir les mêmes accès aux données de recherche, prétendre au même poste de responsabilité dans le secteur de la recherche, c'est-à-dire être des leaders dans le monde de la recherche en Côte d'Ivoire. Actuellement, nous avons 6 universités publiques. Bien, je peux dire peut-être malheureusement, nous n'avons qu'une seule femme présidente d'université. On en avait 2, mais il y a une qui est passée après ministre de l'enseignement supérieur et de la recherche scientifique. Elle est toujours ministre, mais elle n'est plus à ce poste. Maintenant, elle est ministre de la promotion de la femme, du genre. Et il faut dire qu'après 10 ans dans le domaine du financement de la recherche, et face aux différentes disparités que le PASRES a rencontrées, nous avons décidé de définir une politique interne de prise en compte du genre dans toutes les activités que nous organisons, principalement lors des appels à projets, lors des appels des différents ateliers de formation aussi que nous organisons. Cette politique est certes en cours de formalisation, mais elle est déjà mise en pratique. Il faudrait dire également que parmi ces activités, on organise des ateliers de formation dédiés exclusivement aux femmes et animés exclusivement par les femmes, afin que ces dernières soient des modèles pour les autres. Lorsque nous lançons les avis d'appel à projet 2 fois par an, c'est vrai qu'on ne fait pas de la discrimination positive, mais on a une mention qui spécifie qu'il faudrait que les candidatures féminines soient vivement encouragées. Depuis l'année passée, nous avons aussi initié une distinction, une cérémonie de distinction des étudiantes dans les STEM. Cette année, cette activité aura lieu le 28 novembre, où nous allons, oui, 28 de ce mois, où nous allons distinguer 20 femmes, 20 étudiantes dans les STEM de niveau Master 2. Mais à côté, nous allons également organiser un panel où des brillantes femmes dans le domaine viendront montrer l'importance pour ces jeunes filles-là de continuer leurs études et que le genre, les STEM ne sont pas réservés aux hommes. Il faudrait déconstruire le préjugé et continuer les études pour pouvoir au fait renouveler, parce qu'on a des disciplines comme les maths info où souvent on n'a aucune femme qui s'inscrit. Je pense que je vais m'arrêter là. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Anit, for giving us an experience from the Ivory Coast perspective. And it is encouraging to hear that you have in place mechanisms to ensure that women are not left behind. In terms of the policy that you're working on, and of course the processes of or the programs that you're already implementing, whereby you have considered encouraging women to be part of it. Now, having heard from Ivory Coast, I think it's time now to invite Ghana, Adelaide, who is from the Ministry of Environment, Science, Research and Innovation, to share her experience too.
Thank you, Jemima. So in Ghana's case, gender issues has been always at the center of our discussion at the policy level. From the 2010 policy to the 2017 policy, there has been a session dedicated to gender inclusivity in terms of science, technology, innovation. One of the key things that we necessitated this, especially in recent times, was the fact that we noticed that our studies done by some of our research institutions noticed that early career female scientists were having issues in terms of career development, where you would even have statements from a scientist who leave and go and do a PhD, successfully comes and feels that she hasn't even accomplished anything because she comes and she thinks she's lost so much, either in terms of personal family or in terms of career. Even assimilating back within the institution, even or within the research circle of her colleague is sometimes a challenge. You find that during the time of a female researcher's career, especially in the early days when they want to balance family and then work, there's not a conscious effort of the male choosing them as research partners. So one of the key things that our policy initiatives within the STI policy has done is, for example, the establishment of associations by female researchers. So one of two key research institutions in Ghana, that is the CSIR Ghana and then the Ghana Atomic Energy, all have female researchers association, where they meet annually to discuss key issues of what affects their work. But that is said, is still more to be done, especially as we go into the phase of establishing our granting council. We definitely will have to make a conscious effort that gender issues and inclusivity is considered within the fund development and in implementation. And we are hoping that once we, with the help of the SGCI and what is already ongoing, we can really work on a good document.
Thank you, Adelaide, for such a wonderful bit of information regarding on where you are. And what has come out, actually, it's something which has been cutting across throughout most of the African countries, whereby the issue of culture, which has been quite a challenge in most of the communities, which has hampered the progress of women. But it's good to hear that something is being done so that to break that issue, which has been an obstacle for development of women in education as well as research. Then allow me to move the mic to, I will jump over Burkina Faso in order to balance the table and give the chance to Uganda to share the Ugandan perspective in terms of gender inclusivity.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. For Uganda's experience during the first phase of the ACGCI 1, I think our experience is not quite different from the others. It is shaped by the fact that there are very few numbers, if we were to begin with numbers, of female researchers in the country. And this springs from an equally small number of females that are able to progress in the education system. There are a number of reasons which have been given, and I think I wouldn't want to go into those, because we would spend the whole day discussing why there is little participation of females in the education system, and more so science education system. But I think many of the issues are largely cultural, and then also systemic. So that means that we have really a small number of females as researchers from whom to draw researchers that qualify for our national grants. These are grants that are given competitively and using merit-based principles. But what we've done, or what we've seen, besides the small numbers, we've seen a possibility that we try to exploit to some level, and we hope we'll be able to do that even more in the second phase of the SGCI. We've seen that there is a possibility of working within the guidelines to ensure more inclusivity of the female gender, or more participation of females in our national research goals. And one of the things that we've done to ensure that was to attempt to introduce a window within our research guidelines that would enable competition from within only female researchers. But of course, that met with a lot of complications. It needed a lot of flexibilities in terms of amendments with national research guidelines. So what we did to overcome the legal complications that would come with that was to actually include gender as a national priority, gender research as a national priority within our call. Now, of course, this did not exclude anyone. It only just included the possibility of more females who quite understand gender issues to be able to apply for these grants. But of course, we also saw that there are men who are very knowledgeable about gender issues that were able to actually also partake of some of these grants. So I think this one was just inclusivity, regardless of whether one is male or female. But it gave a high opportunity for females to actually be able to win the grants or participate in the grants. Then the other thing that we did was to require the research consortia to actually reflect more of inclusivity of both gender. Now, what we did here was to require that each of the consortia has either a PI who is male and a female co-PI, or at least have senior or principal researchers as reflective of either of the gender, other than having one gender managing the entire project. Then the other element that we did was to look into another requirement that the designs of research that we were getting in terms of proposals also do look beyond the numbers. They do take into account the gender considerations beyond numbers. And here that meant that research had to also look into gender issues. If they could focus on gender itself, the dimensions of gender, the dynamics of, for instance, having a critical mass of female and male researchers at the workplace or something like that, anything to do with addressing the plight of the female especially would also count as a consideration. Then in addition to that, we also require that they do disaggregate the statistics to be able to show how the projects are affecting the different gender or are influenced by opinions from different gender. This, of course, requires that they have a considerable representation of the different gender on the research teams or research subjects that were being studied. I want to refer you to a book by Christine Perez. I think many of you who understand gender have perhaps come across it. It talks about gender biases in research. And I think it really gives us a lot of issues that we need to look at as research managers if we are to talk about and address inclusivity in a broader sense. And I beg to end at this point, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ishmael, for giving us your experience from Uganda with the various initiatives that you put in place to ensure that the women participation in research, science, technology, and innovation increases. I will now pass on the mic to Aminata from Burkina Faso to give her experience too. And I believe that the audience is taking notes for suggestions and questions. We'll have a session of about 10 to 15 minutes to review the panel discussion. Thank you.
Merci, Jemima. Pour ce qui concerne le Burkina, je voudrais d'abord souligner que nous avons une politique nationale en matière de genre. Seulement, ce sont les outils et les stratégies pour sa mise en œuvre qui posent problème. Et cela se ressent également au niveau de la recherche, où j'aimerais partager avec vous quelques chiffres. Au niveau de la recherche nationale, au niveau des centres de recherche, nous avons seulement 23% de femmes. Et au niveau des universités publiques, nous avons 9%, et au niveau des universités privées, 14%. Donc, ces chiffres reflètent un peu la sous-effectivité des femmes au niveau du secteur de la recherche au Burkina. Et si je prends au niveau du financement de la recherche au niveau du fonds, nous avons depuis sa création seulement 18% de femmes qui jusqu'à présent ont postulé pour un financement de la recherche. Et parmi ces 18% de femmes qui soumettent, nous avons 7% qui ont obtenu un financement pour leur projet de recherche. Pour revenir également au problème de la sous-effectivité des femmes au niveau du secteur, il faut savoir qu'au niveau des centres de recherche ou des universités, nous avons remarqué le fait que la carrière même des femmes stagne un peu au niveau ingénieur ou au niveau doctorat. Si je prends le cas de notre institut, l'Institut de l'environnement de recherche agricole où je suis, depuis sa création, bientôt 30 ans, nous avons seulement que 2%, 2 femmes seulement qui ont pu accéder au poste de directrice de recherche, et ça, c'était en 2018. Donc, tout cela montre en fait le problème même de la promotion du statut de la femme dans le milieu de la recherche. Donc, au niveau du FONRID, nous sommes en train de travailler à mettre en place une stratégie pour promouvoir la question du genre. Et il y a Dr Tamboura qui vient de me désigner comme étant le point focal genre pour pouvoir coordonner les activités de formation, de renforcement de capacité en fait, pour les femmes au niveau du Burkina. Donc, c'est déjà un pas pour pouvoir mettre en œuvre la stratégie genre au FONRID. Et pour développer un peu, nous comptons, avec cette nouvelle activité, faire des appels à projets destinés uniquement aux femmes et aux jeunes, et également plaider pour l'instauration d'un quota genre pour le financement de la recherche. Donc, pour ne pas être trop long, je vais m'arrêter là concernant l'expérience du Burkina en matière de genre. Merci.
Thank you, Aminata. Before we can get into discussions, we would like also to reflect on what the Science Granting Council Phase 2 will entail in terms of how we plan to have the gender inclusivity as one of the aspects to be focused. Maybe now in 2 minutes each, I would like you to share with the audience on what will you do differently based on what you have shared to us in order to ensure that you have considered gender, the aspect of gender within the project that you are going to implement. And in addition to that, also, I would like to request you to, if you have any requests or special requests that you would like to put across to the coordinators to consider, you are most welcome to share that so that it can be taken into consideration. So who will take the mic first?
Thank you. Going into phase 2, I think, and based on the presentations we've had earlier from Dorothy, Dakalia, I think one of the key things that we may have to consider as an SGC is to sort of create a platform for female researchers to interact. I mean, it's all good that we are doing studies and the reports were different. It is important if we would also create a platform for them to continuously, during the period of the program, to share their experience on how we are implementing the phase and including them in it. Another thing I would do is, I recommend is, as we go into the second phase, is to also look at SGC's giving indication of percentage of funding that has gone to female lead researchers. So it's not enough giving funding to say, okay, a female scientist completed in the research. The issue is being a lead researcher. And if there is no capacity to be a lead, we will force you, but we must encourage that. As I said, some of the key issues that you find with female researchers is, and I'm just going to give a practical example. You may have been away from the office for 6 months for maternity leave, and you come and you have the whole period of assimilating yourself, especially even if there is a call and you want to put and you need a help, or there's already a call being answered by a team, which was, and you want to be part. I mean, it becomes difficult sometimes for some of them. So I think that if we want to really make impact, then we must make a conscious effort to measure these indicators, how the percentage of funds that went to researchers, female researchers that were lead in the research. I think these will be key. And talking about the Ghana experience of what the network associations that is being formed, I think that SGCI can look at also encouraging this. This is not some sort of a club, but this is a national initiative we can encourage within the various institutions that we will be working with for the female researchers where they are not, but if they are, to form an association where they themselves would organize platforms for discussions of their issues. I think sometimes it is important. It may be that they are just a few, but forming such networks help. Of course, they do belong to global networks, but within the institution, it is also important. That's it for now.
Adelaide?
Pour répondre à cette question, donc, je voulais dire qu'au niveau du Fonds RID, nous avons initié des programmes de formation sur la prise en compte du genre dans l'élaboration et l'exécution même des projets de recherche. Donc, nous avons commencé cette année. Et également, nous comptons mener une collecte de données sur le genre afin de mieux affiner notre stratégie genre dans le milieu de la recherche. Et également plaider au niveau de l'équité. Bon, personnellement, moi, je pense qu'au-delà même de l'égalité, il faut qu'on passe un peu plus au niveau supérieur sur l'équité, parce que quoi qu'on dise, il est vraiment compliqué pour une femme et un homme, étant tous chercheurs, d'avoir les mêmes capacités. Parce que nous avons, étant femmes, des contraintes sociales déjà. Et si je prends le milieu de la recherche agricole, et même physiquement, nous ne sommes pas au même niveau quand vous devez passer toute la journée dans des champs d'expérimentation et autres. Je pense qu'on pourrait aussi plaider pour plus de facilité. Ça, moi, j'appelle ça l'équité, pour nous amener un peu plus sur le même pied d'égalité afin que la carrière même des femmes puisse décoller. Parce que si on regarde le pourcentage de femmes qui stagnent au niveau ingénieur et qui n'arrivent pas à atteindre les sommets, tout ça, ça peut être lié à l'équité dans le secteur. Et également, je pense qu'au niveau africain, notamment au niveau du Burkina, il faudrait qu'on travaille aussi à rehausser même le leadership des femmes dans la recherche, parce qu'on a tendance à se cacher derrière les hommes. Et je dis ça parce que même au niveau des appels à projets, on voit qu'il y a moins de femmes qui postulent. Beaucoup veulent être dans l'équipe, mais ne veulent pas porter en fait la tête du projet. Et il est vraiment important pour nous de travailler à rehausser aussi le leadership des femmes pour qu'elles s'affirment un peu plus dans la recherche. Et cela peut être aussi un modèle pour les jeunes à venir, parce que quand on regarde dans nos universités, de moins en moins les jeunes filles sont intéressées par la recherche, parce que déjà c'est un cycle qui est très long, c'est très difficile et il n'y a rien en fait pour les accompagner. Donc je pense que ce point aussi va servir de de discussion au niveau du fonds RIT. Merci.
Thank you, Aminata.
Merci, Jemima. Pour la Côte d'Ivoire, je pense que déjà, on a pour ambition de lancer une fois par an des appels à projets exclusivement réservés aux femmes. Puisque nous avons 2 appels à projets par an, on pourrait déjà, de manière extraordinaire, une fois par an, lancer des appels à projets exclusivement pour les femmes, des post-docs et les doctorantes, sans problème. Et on peut également essayer de renforcer le système de réseautage des femmes. Il existe déjà en Côte d'Ivoire une association des femmes chercheurs. Mais cette association, en fait, ne rencontre pas l'adhésion de la quasi-totalité des femmes dans le milieu de l'enseignement. Donc, le PASRES pourrait être déjà en interface de cette activité pour mobiliser encore plus les femmes à se mettre ensemble et développer ensemble des projets de recherche. Il faudrait également inciter les porteurs principaux des projets à avoir des équipes basées sur le genre. Il arrive très souvent, et principalement quand on rencontre dans le financement de nos projets des équipes exclusivement d'hommes. On n'a pas d'intégration de femmes. Au niveau du PASRES, en fait, on n'avait pas de politique spécifique sur ce point pour obliger, si je peux le dire, les chercheurs, les porteurs principaux à intégrer au moins une femme, un jeune dans les équipes. Mais après toutes les différentes discussions que nous avons eues durant ces différentes réunions, je pense que la nécessité s'impose de pouvoir effectivement intégrer une clause notifiant qu'il faut obligatoirement dans les propositions de projet intégrer la dimension genre et même dans les résultats. Puisque les résultats diffèrent des cultures et également du sexe, il faudrait qu'un point d'honneur soit mis sur ces différents éléments. Et en fait, il faudrait aussi commencer le plaidoyer à partir du ministère de l'Éducation nationale. Parce que le choix stratégique des étudiantes ou autres dépend de la base. Quand déjà au lycée et au collège, on n'a pas cette culture scientifique, il faudrait déjà qu'à notre niveau, on arrive à développer cette conscience scientifique pour que les jeunes filles se disent que la recherche n'est pas réservée aux hommes. Il y a des personnes qui ont embrassé certaines disciplines, qui sont arrivées au doctorat, qui ont émergé et qui ont eu des carrières brillantes. Donc, je pense que déjà, à partir de l'année prochaine, nous pouvons déjà commencer à implémenter ces différents éléments. Merci.
Thank you very much, Ivory Coast, for such an insightful sharing. Lastly but not least, I would like to invite Uganda also to give their views.
Thank you very much, Madam Facilitator. I think for us, in answering the question of what we are going to do differently in SGCI 2, I would want to a bit differ from that and say that since we consider to be on track, we will not do anything differently. What we will do instead, we will consolidate and enhance what we are doing. I think that is my starting point. We stand point as a country. And then in doing or in consolidating what we have done and enhancing that, we will conduct a specific study as a council. We have proposed to conduct a study to understand issues that affect gender, especially the female, when it comes to participating in research. What are the factors, what are the really nitty-gritties that we think we need to understand if we want to encourage greater participation of females in research, be it competitive, be it routine, or otherwise. Then based on that, we will also want to continue including female or gender research as a national priority. and therefore the subsequent calls that we issue, both under the SGCI2 and also the National Innovation Fund, will include gender research as a specific area of research that people or researchers can subscribe to. Then we also want to include gender considerations among the issues for consideration under research ethics. Because we do have a mechanism of clearing research, and that mechanism includes looking at or giving ethical clearance to research that is conducted within the country. But of course, and that's the point where we could actually legislate gender considerations in research. And that's what we think would be an effective way of having almost all these concerns we're talking about addressed from the research perspective. Then at the same time, we want to, or we are in the process of establishing a gender alliance. This is the National Gender Alliance for Research and Higher Education. And as we speak, the alliance is already established, but they are working on documents for formal recognition by government. They are now working on a charter. Now, this alliance is comprised of gender, what we call gender champions and gender focal points in all universities and research institutions in the country. Now, their main purpose is going to be, first of all, to serve as role models for upcoming female researchers, to give them the hope that actually it is possible to be a female scientist, to be a researcher, and to be successful in those fields, just like the other men and the other gender are. Then also the other aspect is for them to advocate for policy reviews, policy changes, or developments of policies that actually promote female participation in research and higher education. Then also the other one will be to actually showcase what female researchers have been able to achieve in the area of research, and promote, for instance, the referencing of materials from female researchers. At the same time, mentor their colleagues, and also be in a position to create a critical mass. We do believe that a critical mass actually builds confidence in those that feel let down by their fewness or aloneness. So on that note, I want to end here and say that we are maintaining the course, but just amplifying the efforts that we are going to be doing in the second phase.
Thank you, Ismail. If I can sum up what has come out of this discussion, the key things we are having, or which are cutting across all the experiences we've had, is the issue of numbers. Still, the issue of numbers in terms of female participation in research is quite low. And then the aspect of funding was mentioned by each panelist, and it's an issue that needs to be considered. And then the aspect of working with the policy makers is also an area of intervention, which will inculcate the culture of encouraging women from the younger stage to indulge in STEM-related studies, as well as encouraging women in research. And then the other thing that has come out is about the issue of data. gender aggregated data is missing in most of our countries, and this is an encouragement that needs to be taken up so that we can have the real picture of what we have on the ground. The issue of giving incentives to women, I think, has also been mentioned. And with those few, with those few, with the discussion that we've had in this panel, we have about 6 minutes to react. For those who are having some comments or questions, I think the floor is open. Someone to pass the mic around? Anyone who has
Hello, thank you for a wonderful presentation. I just wanted to clarify, did you do any baseline studies regarding the issues such as cultural factors, religious factors, other societal factors that have led to the low numbers in women in science or research? Because, I mean, we're talking about African community, African society. We have a lot of issues. And before we get to that stage whereby we have, high-powered researchers, we're talking about young girls graduating from university or even right from primary school. I think essentially that's the work of this NGO that does, is it Girls Not Brides? They are trying to encourage that. Now, before we get to that stage of having more researchers, I think we need a proper look, just like Peter said, to look at what are the issues, what has led to this. We have so many factors like marriage putting you, in a particular location, and you can't move. And sort of time passes before you move on when your children are grown up and you feel it's already too late and things like that. And also in the institutions, you find, just like what one of the panel members said, the issue of having maternity leave. I mean, we want young people to participate, not menopausal women. And yes, and nobody wants to employ them. I had this debate with someone in where I worked before, and he didn't know I was standing there, and he was saying, somebody was saying, well, we are looking for a lecturer too, can you get? And he said, I hope it's not women you are looking for. And he just turned and saw me there. I'm sorry. But the problem is, you get them, you start research with them or something, and before you know it, this one will say maternity leave 3 months, this one will say this. Once this one comes back, it's maternity leave again. So I think it goes beyond just saying we need to increase the number. We also need to look at what are the issues and how we can solve these issues. Thank you.
we'll take 3 questions and then
Okay, thank you very much for the fascinating interventions. My question or comment really is about how the reality is that gender sits at the junction or at the intersection of so many issues that are at levels maybe much higher than our domain, the domain we are talking about here. So I would want to hear specific examples of how evidence from our domain is being used to influence those nexuses where decisions are likely to be made, which are way beyond the people that are in this conversation. Thank you.
there's a hand there. Maybe turn to him and then react to that first.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you, panelists. Very interesting situation. I'd like to pick up from what Julius just submitted. Is it an absence of adequate strategy, or is it that our strategies are flawed, or is it an absence of workable implementation strategies? because I think across a number of countries we have quite a number of instruments. There are some that are more than 20 years old. I know in Zambia the policy on S&T is way past 20 years old, and there are a number of policies that are about 10 years now, the policy, the gender policy, the national gender policy, but the movement, especially in STEM, is very slow. And again, the SGCs must develop a strategy to work with the civil society. The civil society seems to have created its own niche. And in their niche, they are scoring. So I'm convinced if we walk in there, we'll pick a lot of lessons. Thank you.
Then there was a hand in that row, I mean.
Yeah, thank you. I congratulate the panel for the discussion. Maybe I missed some of it because of administrative issues. But my contribution is to look at issues at different levels, because we understand the issues of STEM around low levels of education from secondary school until even from primary school until to the higher level. But we tend to get relieved when we see girls entering universities, but there are issues at the institutions as well, issues of disrespect, abuse, especially when women, young girls are studying in faculties where are male dominated. How do those, the lecturers, how do the professors treat the ladies, the girls? How do the professors themselves, the lecturers themselves relate amongst themselves as women and men? Because this is where the girls start to look up into the next stages of their life. Because if there is no respectful relationships between the male instructors and the female instructors, it's for them, it's first stage of discouragement that I'm in the wrong field. So I think the institutional issues needs to be addressed as well. Then there is a need maybe for having not only gender policies. Some institutions you find that they have gender policies, but are they implemented? Are they resourced? Do they have monitoring plan? Do they have clear implementation, strategies such that somebody is disrespected, have a clear understanding of where they should report, what they shall be do? Is there any feedback mechanisms for those who have been disrespected and such things? So there is issues at the higher institution levels of training as well, especially also issues of funding. How are these gender policies, for instance? They exist there, but in papers, not in practice, because there's no sustainable funding allocated to implementation. And why it's not allocated is maybe it's another gender issues again. So I think institutional issues at higher learning institutions and research organizations also is an area to look at. Maybe also issues at the labor market. There are women engineers, women contractors, women, how are they faring in the market? Because these women who are graduating or about to graduate at the higher learning institutions, they are looking up into the other women in the labor market. When they meet them, when they talk to them, what do they tell them? Oh, my sister, you are lost. I did my 5 years of good, hard training at the university, but see what I'm here. So those things, they need to be systematically addressed at different levels. For instance, through professional organizations, professional associations, for instance, women engineers, women contractors, those engineers, especially for the science subjects, for the engineering and such things, they need to come out, and these young women have to see their sisters, their mothers doing well in the market, even in terms of how they can acquire, for instance, have access to tenders, different tenders. Is it easy for them to get tenders the same as it is for men to get tenders? So those things, we might struggle all this and invest a lot at low levels, but when they get up, they are getting disappointed. And another contribution, final one, is on for instance, in strengthening monitoring of gender in research. For instance, it helps when you have tools which are monitoring research implementation, which requires to have male and female researchers in the team. And also during monitoring, if you have tools that are helping to show that you are also building capacity for women. Thank you.
Thank you. That was quite mouthful. I really appreciate the contributions from the floor. And what is coming out here is actually about two issues, if I can sum them up. It's the issues of policies and the underlying factors. And therefore, the underlying factors which are actually hampering women's progress towards in research. And for that, I want to give 30 minutes, 30 seconds per panelist. Sorry, 30 seconds for each panelist to give parting shots in light of what has been raised from the floor, either policy or the underlying factors.
Okay. I mean, in the two male who spoke said it all. But I think that I wrote here, is it gender in STEM policy versus just gender policy? I think sometimes we say gender policy, we all have gender policy, but is it gender policy that is addressing specific gender groups? So what we are talking here is research groups. So what is the key issues and what is the policies or strategies that we have that is addressing them as a professional group? And I think that is where sometimes we miss these two, and we may develop strategies, policies around them, and in generic, and it may not be specifically addressing the key issue of that particular group.
Ok, merci Jemima. En 30 secondes, en 30 secondes, je pourrais dire simplement que par rapport à toutes les contributions, je pense qu'elles sont toutes fondées. De par mon exemple, je suis femme, je suis enseignante d'université, je travaille dans un fonds de financement. Je pense que je suis aussi bien placée pour comprendre tout ce qui a été dit, parce qu'il y a une réalité, ce n'est pas évident. La femme étant multifonctionnelle, il est vraiment difficile pour elle de s'insérer dans un milieu où on ne trouve que principalement des hommes. Et nous sommes dans la culture africaine. Il est difficile de se départir de cette culture africaine et des considérations religieuses. Mais je pense que notre conseil déjà essaie de prendre tous ces paramètres en compte. Et d'un point de vue sociologique, je pense qu'on doit partir sur cette base pour pouvoir définir les meilleures politiques. Merci.
Thank you.
Moi, je vais rebondir sur la question de Madame concernant sa question pour savoir est-ce que nous avons de la documentation sur les raisons qui font que les femmes sont sous-représentées dans les domaines scientifiques. Moi, je vais dire que chez nous, pendant longtemps, on ne s'est jamais posé la question à savoir pourquoi il y a peu de femmes. C'était tellement évident parce qu'on se dit que c'est parce que les femmes ne comprennent pas les mathématiques, les physiques et autres qui font que les femmes ne faisaient pas des matières scientifiques. Donc, ce qui peut expliquer en partie le manque de données véritables sur la question du genre dans le milieu de l'enseignement supérieur ou de la recherche. Ce qui va nous ramener également au fait que les institutions ou les organismes qui financent la recherche doivent vraiment collecter des données pour mieux comprendre en fait la situation afin d'élaborer des stratégies pour guider, afin de mieux prendre en compte cette question du genre dans la recherche. Merci.
Thank you very much. Parting comments. I want to agree with the contributors from the audience, and I think you can agree with me that they really had a very good input into this discussion, despite the little time they had to intervene. I agree that indeed we need to undertake studies to understand the baseline conditions, where we are starting from, perhaps maybe for SGCI too. I mentioned that Uganda is already in the process of conducting a similar study to understand these issues within the context of the intervention that we are considering this afternoon. Yes, I also do agree that we are making a modest contribution. So we wouldn't say that what the SGC is going to do will actually address all the gender issues within the scope of resources, time that we have. But I think we're making a contribution towards the greater good that, for instance, the Global Research Council is working on, the UN and the others are working on. So I think ours is a contribution towards that effort happening on a very busy landscape. So I do also want to agree that indeed some of the issues that affect gender are not only specific to gender. Some of them go beyond gender, like what happens at the national level. So we need to also bring on board other policies and interventions that address those elements that reflect themselves as gender, but are beyond gender. Thank you very much.
And, thank you, my fellow. Thank you, audience, also for listening to this interesting discussion. I'll now pass on the mic to my dear friend here, who will introduce us actually, because of time.
Avec toute l'équipe du panel d'avoir partagé vos expériences. Nous sommes désolés de ne pas avoir beaucoup de temps pour la discussion. Donc nous allons passer immédiatement à la table ronde 2 qui va traiter du même thème. Mais là, le focus sera mis sur les pratiques des institutions internationales. Nous venons de voir les expériences au niveau national. Dans ce panel, nous allons parler, les participants vont parler des pratiques et initiatives internationales. Donc, je voudrais appeler Mme Dorothy Ngila, de NRF, M. Marcus Wilm, de la DIFJ, il y en a, Maha Hayat, de l'Arabie Saoudite, que nous applaudissons notre consoeur qui est venu nous rejoindre hier pratiquement tard dans la soirée. Donc, Maha, vous pouvez venir et joindre les autres membres du panel. Troisième intervenant, c'est Makiba Charles Ayinde, National Science Foundation des États-Unis, et Sarah Plowman, United Kingdom for Research and Innovation. Écrit. Donc, Madame la Présidente Dorothy, Madame la Présidente, je voudrais vous demander si c'est possible de réserver un peu plus de temps pour la discussion. Si on pouvait avoir 10 à 15 minutes pour la discussion. C'est vrai que nous sommes en retard, mais on aimerait bien rattraper le temps perdu pour la pause. Donc nous vous proposons, au lieu de réserver 30 minutes pour la pause, de prendre que 10 minutes, avec votre indulgence, si vous acceptez, bien sûr. Donc, Dorothy, vous pouvez démarrer votre séance.
Thank you very much, Suke. Before we start, somebody has lost or misplaced their spectacles and a phone. So if that person is you, please could I ask you to see my colleague Puling Titlo seated at the back, just to get those ones. Thank you very much, colleagues. So in the last panel discussion, we have heard quite a number of experiences from science granting councils that are based here on the continent. And it was a very, very extensive set of practices and experiences that were shared, including those who were presented in the discussion. This time around, we have really the very much delight of having science granting councils that are members of the GRC, participating organizations of the GRC, with us in this meeting, and we have requested them to also share experiences around this question of promoting the status of and equality of women in research, and also specifically thinking a little bit more around the sex and gender dimension in research. So I will start by thanking the panelists first in advance, and starting perhaps with Marcus with a question. So the German Research Foundation has quite a holistic approach to issues that are related to gender in research. And I was wondering whether you could unpack that within about 3 minutes, so we can hear what that approach is. Thank you, Marcus.
Dorothy, thank you. You said 10 minutes. Well, now it's 3 minutes. So let's try. Well, let's try to compress this a bit. Thank you. Well, DFG has installed both structural and specific measures to promote the equality of and status of women in research. And to start with, the promotion of equality has been anchored actually in Section 1 of our statutes. So it's there already on paper, but you of course have to implement it. So, and to establish a sustainable gender equality policy for DFG members and also DFG member organizations and scientific landscape in Germany, DFG introduced already in 2008 research-oriented standards on gender equality, as we call it, which is actually a voluntary, I have to stress this, a voluntary commitment by which the DFG member organizations define structural and personnel-related standards and reported them on a yearly basis. This was reconfirmed in 2017, and since then member organizations agreed to submit qualitative reports on changing key topics regarding this area. And so what happens then is that based on these reports, there are mutually supportive and non-competitive discussions among the member organizations discussing examples of successful and not so successful equal opportunity measures. There are additional measures on a structural level, so we do have some quantitative targets for participation of female researchers in decision-making bodies and reviews. So we make sure that at least 30% of members of the DFG decision-making bodies and the subgroups are female, which is kind of oriented at the current about 23% female professors in Germany that we have. We have further program and subject-specific targets in reviews and so on. Let me skip all of this. We also, quite recently this year, codified central standards regarding gender diversity issues in DFG's guidelines of safeguarding good scientific practice, which make these very visible. So for example, with regard to the processes of staff selection and development, consideration is given to gender equality and diversity and the avoidance of implicit bias. And also concerning the project design, researchers should reflect on the relevance of gender and diversity dimension in their research. Maybe till there for the moment. I could go on, but...
Thank you very much, Marcus. I'm really interested, and I'm going to ask the audience to keep reflecting on this. Marcus, you raised a really important question around supporting responsible research and the issue of gender being part of that idea of responsible research as well. So it's a question that we need to be reflecting on in the whole notion of scientific excellence and research excellence. Maha Kayat from the King Abdulaziz City for Science and Technology, you have an interesting fellowship scheme that you've been supporting women researchers. I was wondering whether you could share on that as one of the examples in the booklet that we have just launched. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy.
3 minutes as well.
Sure. Well, first of all, marhaba. So this is an Arabic word, means hello. Well, there are so many things. 1 minute for this. I'm inspired by this peaceful city, Dar es Salaam. I'm inspired about this city. one of those things I noted that the majority in this room and at the morning as well, the majority are women. So this is something inspired me and encouraged me to give this information. It might represent as an example for what we do in Saudi Arabia at King Abdulaziz City of Science and Technology. I'll focus in two main points or two main actions. One of these, the first action is among the actions which were presented by my colleague Anna at the early session, addressing systematic and institutional barriers. At my institution, King Abdulaziz City of Science and Technology, we're working to improve the expertise of women employees and prepare them for a future or advanced administrative or decision-making position and other scientific commitments. I think at this point, it's quite related to share with you this news that the member of the governing board of JRC, Dr. Anas Al-Faris, who is also the representative of MENA region, has been appointed as the president of CACS recently, a few days ago. And to reflect on that, how it is important that the first thing he did at his office, he met with the ladies in the organization to see what are the things that challenges us and present or discuss what are the approaches to help them to promote and to work further. This is one of the positive stories I start off with. The other thing, Dorothy, when we talk about the initiatives, we have at CACS fellowship. It's IBIC fellowship. It's abbreviation, Ibn Khaldun Fellowship between CACS and MIT, the world-class university, to collaborate and work and send the most, I mean, it is a very competitive fellowship. After, several steps, evaluate the proposal, and then they send those ladies to spend a year at MIT. And this is open for them windows to work further and to proceed with their work and to learn new teaching technologies. And beside that, the most important thing, create connections. Am I possible? In fact, there is around 70 papers that were published between CACS and MIT through this program. So it's quite successful beside other patents which are registered for CACS and MIT together. This is one of the programs which, it's encouraging women to proceed with their research with high institutes like MIT. Thank you.
Thank you, Maha. So in the last panel, we had that some of us as granting councils on the continent are thinking about specific programs for supporting women in research. And I think this example that you have in Saudi Arabia provides us with some inspiration. Thank you for sharing. I want to jump, Sarah, and come all the way to Makeba. So last year, the NSF issued this very comprehensive sexual harassment policy. And this, of course, in the back foot of Me Too. And I wanted to find out from you if you could just share with us the context of that and what that comprehensiveness looks like in context of this discussion that we've been having about safeguarding scientific practices.
Okay, thank you. So sexual harassment has been guided by what we call Title IX in the US before. So it's had a set of laws that were governing this process of reporting sexual harassment. However, about 2 years ago, NSF started to bolster their policies, their guidelines, and their communications because we thought that it was important that awardee institutions understand, they have a clear understanding of our expectations of them, and that individuals understand their rights. So in October 21st, to be exact, 2018, we have a new policy that went into effect. And with that policy, it requires awardee institutions to report any sexual harassment findings or determinations. They have 10 days to do so, and that includes if a PI, a principal investigator or co-PI has been placed on administrative leave, whether that PI has had an administrative action taken against them. So that includes a reduction on teaching, reduction on campus time, mentoring, research, and important to understand that it also includes any interim actions that have been taken on the PI. So that's any action that has been put in place whilst they are conducting their investigation. So that must be directed to NSF's Office of Diversity and Inclusion. In addition to that, we have established an online portal. So now, you no longer need to go through your awardee institution to report sexual harassment. You can do that reporting directly to NSF. And we will take up the charge of liaising with that institution and ensuring that a comprehensive investigation is completed. And what we have also done, liaising back to what we heard earlier about data, is that we have launched just very, very recently a Dear Colleague letter, which is basically a call for proposals for research about sexual harassment. So that's to help us to understand the causes and consequences of sexual harassment so that we can be more effective at preventing sexual harassment from occurring. So it's quite comprehensive. There are a lot of things that are involved, but I think I have to stop here. Stop here.
Thank you very much. Part of your question around baseline studies and the difficulties that women researchers on a continent face is exactly in dealing with issues around sexual harassment. We all heard, we've known about the very extensive report that the BBC Africa did with specific universities in West Africa. And I think it is a responsibility of us as research funders to really take this issue very seriously, especially when it comes to those who we are funding and the institutions that are receiving public money to support research. So thank you, Makeba, for that. We are going to move right into second gear now, and we are going to explore a little bit about this question of sex and gender dimension in research. So Sarah Plowman from UKRI, we know that UKRI and DFG, so I'll come back to you, Marcus, on this one, have been experimenting a little bit about approaches in terms of the research and grants management cycle and how one integrates the gender dimension in research content and design. I wondered whether you could share a little bit about their journey and whether there are some practical insights that you can already share in public now. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Dorothy. So in April this year, we launched a requirement that certain funding calls for funding would have to, applicants would have to supply a gender equality statement. And as part of that, they are required to consider the gender inclusivity as part of the research team, but also as part of the research project itself. So to consider the impacts of the research on gender, and I think also really importantly to consider the potential unintended negative consequences that this research could have on gender and the relationships of between people of different genders. So it's an additional requirement for some calls, as I said. It's not been rolled out across the whole of UKRI's activities at the moment. But I think actually it's a little early to say what the impacts of that have been, because we've only actually, I think, had 3 programs that have gone through the full process yet. But I think it was very reassuring at those panel meetings how that was received by the peer reviewers and the panel members in terms of the quality of discussions that were had around those types of aspects. And because one of the things that we were concerned about was whether we would have a sufficiently robust discussion with the panel members that we had on those types of aspects, and whether that was an area that we perhaps might need to upskill and build capacity. But actually, the panels handled this additional requirement very well, and were very supportive of the need to consider this type of this requirement as part of our applications. So I think it's very much a case of now what we have done is build in an evaluation step, which will take place in, I think, starting kind of April next year, where we actually look back over the first year and consider the impact of this, and if there are areas that we need to improve guidance on and improve kind of to think about where we could perhaps enhance the area. And I think one of the things that we've noticed certainly straight away is that the research teams are very good at talking about gender inclusivity as it pertains to their research team itself and what they've done, that they are struggling more when it comes to thinking about the gender dimension of the research they're actually doing and the impact that that might have on people of different genders. So I think we are already starting to think about how we could perhaps help them to consider that more.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for that. Marcus, I wondered whether you had any comments on where you are in terms of this aspect of sex-gender dimension in research within the DFG.
Thank you, Dorothy. I should say it may also be a bit early at the moment. What I can say is what I just said, that only in this year we published these guidelines for safeguarding good scientific practice, where the aspect of sex and gender as a dimension in research has a prominent role, and it's still to see how this changes the way research is being done. I think it's not. Scientists are aware of this dimension, but I think not aware enough. So it will help in increasing the awareness.
So, all the panelists, Sarah, you raised an issue about the panel, right, and panel members. I was wondering whether you could reflect each on how you work together with your panel members, your reviewers, so that we can take gender into consideration in the ways in which they make decisions on who we are going to fund, which knowledge areas we are going to fund. This is an aspect that takes into consideration for all of us as science granting councils, because it really is the engine of the way in which we fund competitive research. I wonder if I could start with you, Makeba.
So I would say at the moment, NSF judges and evaluates proposals on two criteria, which is the intellectual merit of the proposal and broadening impacts. That, unfortunately, at this point, does not include a specific detail of the gender inclusion in the research outcomes or the analysis of that at this point. We are leaning on that dear colleague letter that I just mentioned to look at whether this is critical for a review panel to include in the evaluation process. But at this point, we are judging just on the historical components that we did before, but that is a work in progress.
Yeah, I think other than the specific examples I gave there, and that's very much focused on the calls that we run using UK official development assistance. So more broadly in UKRI, the primary assessment criteria is research excellence, and so we don't actually consider gender as an assessment criteria for other calls. So for calls that are funded through UK Official Development Assistance, where we ask for a gender equality statement. If we feel, or if the panel judge that the gender equality statement is not sufficient, then those proposals are unlikely to be recommended for funding. So that could be, so research excellence would still be the primary assessment, but then if they're sort of at the borderline where they may or may not be funded, if they do not have a sufficiently strong gender equality statement, then they are unlikely to go above that funding line.
Well, I think there is no criteria, as far as I know, that's referred to women for, I mean, or get merit for women for research, but there are different schemes. Like, for example, we have graduate research program and basic research program and applied research program, and like innovative program and that kind of proposals. But what we noticed that the graduate research program is mainly dominated by females because, I mean, they are active, as everybody was saying in this room, the girls are really active at certain time during their you know, their research life, and they stop at some, or they both sometimes through the, because of commitment and other things, which we have, as you mentioned earlier, we have to look at this problem and we see where is the leakage is happening. I'm sorry, sometimes I take the microphone, so just remind me if I am so excited to speak and take the microphone away from her. But this is, you know, it's just like we need to, you know, if you know the problem, you should be, if you state it, then you should be able to study it and find the solutions. The ladies are active, the girls are active, but then at certain age or certain, at their timeline, there is pause for many reasons, as everybody was mentioning. We need to look at this. What are the reasons behind this? And why we can't proceed for innovative proposals or advanced proposals where we can get, you know, a high fund in comparison to, you know, PhD or other funds, which is quite limited. This is the point which I want to mention. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. I think there's not much diversity in the responses to that question. So I can just echo, yes, scientific excellence is the main criterion for doing making a decision on what proposal to fund. But of course, what we do at DFG is that we look into and try to assess the individual research academic achievements appropriately by considering the individual circumstances. So there can be illnesses, chronic disease. There can be, of course, a pregnancy or child care. So we take these times into account when we assess the academic career. So this is taken into account, but after all, it's scientific excellence that has to be there.
And of course, most of us do provide unconscious bias training to our panel members so that they are able to engage with the proposal review process in a way that removes a lot of the prejudices that we may bring onto the table. And also, you know, we have other measures, leave policies, and thinking about not just track record, but the research opportunity when the panel reviewers are looking at the proposals. So we have a moment now to engage a little bit with the audience for about 2 or 3 questions or comments in relation to, number one, we heard a little bit about the examples that were given on promoting the equality and status of women in research, and also the sex-gender dimension in research. And if anybody from the SGCs would like to also touch base on this issue of reviewers and how we prepare our reviewers to take the aspect of gender into consideration. I'll take 3 questions maximum. Can I see? I'll point you out otherwise. Okay, babe. Hamidou, Julius, and one more. Okay, gone. Yes, and then Salamata. Fatmata, sorry. Hamidou, you can proceed.
Voilà, merci. Je voudrais vraiment remercier les collègues qui ont fait ces introductions sur une thématique extrêmement importante pour nous en tant que responsables des HDC. Je dis ça parce que depuis que nous avons la responsabilité de cette structure, nos partenaires, vous dites en anglais stakeholders, ou bien nos clients, si on est des commerçants, nous posent toujours ce problème-là. Ah, vous ne faites pas assez pour les femmes. Ah, vous avez mis les femmes de côté. Ah, comment il faut faire? C'est très difficile. Vous avez vraiment fait ressortir les points difficiles de la question. Je pense qu'il y a deux niveaux auxquels il faut agir. Nous avons la volonté d'aller de l'avant pour pousser, afin que le genre puisse... mais parfois, vous avez des comités de peer review qui peut-être eux-mêmes ne maîtrisent pas suffisamment comment faire l'analyse des projets qui prennent bien en compte le genre. On peut voir le problème à ce côté d'abord. De l'autre côté, nous avons parfois des compétiteurs qui soumettent des projets qui ne maîtrisent pas non plus suffisamment comment intégrer la question genre dans leur offre de projet pour que la question puisse être... Donc, moi, je ne la vois pas seulement en termes de combien de femmes ont gagné des projets, des financés, etc. Ce n'est pas seulement ça, mais dans le projet lui-même, comment la question du genre est prise en compte. Donc vraiment, toutes mes félicitations. S'il y a des solutions, nous, on est preneurs. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Hamidou. Julia's second question.
Thank you very much to all the panelists. I think my question is around framing, which I think is always a big issue in some of these discussions. And it's a quick reflection on my engagement with the gender equality statement in the UKRI process. Because when I was doing that for a recent project, I started tackling it from the view of the impact of gender on my project, which is very different from the impact of my project on gender. And it was actually more difficult. I had created my own question, but it was actually more difficult for me to try and digest or think about how gender would impact my project. And then I found out that it was actually an easier task that you expected us to do, thinking about the impact of the project on gender. So I think the framing issue is very critical. If you get us to think some more, how does gender impact your project? That could actually shift the terrain. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last one from Fatmata.
Mine is not actually a question, but I just want to add to the conversation why we have very few women in research. Of course, we have to start from the schools. Very few girls are into sciences. And as somebody said before, we look at the job markets, like in my society. Growing up, I can give an example that very smart children were sent to the sciences, and those that were not too smart, the average ones were sent to the humanities. And coming up to after graduation, the job market dictates where you go. And we just realized that those that were sent to the average ones that we consider that were average had the jobs. You in the sciences, there are no jobs to absorb you because the manufacturing companies are failed. We don't have the industries to absorb science graduates. So you only find yourself maybe in the classrooms. And nobody really wants to go there. Because you look at a peer, after 2 or 3 years, you are still in the classroom, the person is in some other job, and you start feeling very bad about yourself. And so coming from that, you don't want to even encourage, you, the science graduate, you don't want to encourage even your own daughter or your sibling to go into sciences. So the social aspect also dictated. Now coming from there, those of us that continued, you go higher, and I was in the university. One main ingredient that maybe we have not spoken about is mentoring. You don't really have mentoring. You go there and you are like left on your own, nobody minds you. So how do you even start and how do you continue from where you are? So those are aspects that are actually militating against women in finding themselves in research and having meaningful research. That's my contribution.
Thank you. Thank you for that contribution. So I'm going to ask the panel to tackle this in 2 ways. The first question is, if you have any comments to any of the questions that have been raised or comments that have been raised, you may please respond. I'm going to ask Sarah to specifically respond to the comment from Julius or the question from Julius. And then to end off the panel discussion, one thing that you would do differently as an organization in relation to promoting the status and equality of women in research. Over the years, you've done many things. What would you do differently? I'm going to ask Sarah to start.
Thank you. And that's a very interesting point. How does gender impact on your project? It certainly wasn't what we were asking. But I think that, so obviously I will take that back and feed into the team that we need to be a bit clearer about what we were asking. But I think that's a really interesting sort of way of thinking about it as well. So that's the other side of the coin, isn't it? How does the research impact on gender, but how does gender impact on your research? And as individuals of different gender, how we all have our own unconscious biases. We view the world through different lenses, and sort of different backgrounds, different cultures, will actually help or hinder us in developing our research programs and can have a positive and or a negative impact on that. So I think it's a really interesting way, and what we have been doing, certainly, I mean, it's not directly related to your point, but it's something that Dorothy mentioned before, is we train people and sort of unconscious bias training when they take part in our panels and part of our peer review, and we've also rolled it out to our staff to try and get people to recognize those biases and that sort of unconscious bias that we all have, and help us to recognize the impacts of that on the work that we do and how we run our programs and how we fund our projects. So I think it's a really interesting point. What would I do differently? Sorry about, oh yeah, okay. Sorry. What would we do differently? Well, I think we've actually commissioned a number of external reviews to look at international practice. So I'm afraid I'm going to fudge the answer because I can't tell you exactly what we're going to do, but we are going to use that evidence base, sort of learning from what other funders have done, and that the review of our processes to actually improve our practice. So we are currently developing an equality, diversity and inclusion framework. We have a team now dedicated within UKRI that specifically looks at quality, diversity and inclusion. And we have an external advisory group that specifically are helping us to think about where our priorities should be and how we should be addressing this over the next 5 to 10 years. So hopefully after the election, we will be able to publish all of that information and I would be able to answer your question more fully.
Okay, so I want to respond to what my colleague over here said regarding starting from what we call the K through 12 level, which is, I think, primary school, NSF has several initiatives where we go out and promote STEM and engineering with the target of girls, and girls rock and girls in science, and we've spent over the past few years a strong push towards inclusivity on that level. What would I do different? I think it's important that we include the gender component as one of the criteria for evaluation when we're looking at proposals. At NSF, there are calls for research that are geared towards historically black college and universities. There are calls that are geared specifically towards Hispanic colleges. We need to do that for females and on a gender basis as well. But prior to doing that, we need to have the evidence to support doing something like that. And that's why we've launched this call for research. So I would like to see it done. Hopefully we will get there. But similar to what we're doing with race, I'd like to see it done with gender as well.
Marcus? Yes. Thank you.
Maybe I can. Is this working? Doesn't want me. This one better, much better. Thank you. Maybe I can just briefly comment on what Hamidou said. In that, yes, peer review. Sometimes the peer review is sometimes to understand how to include gender properly, and also that in some projects one would wish a better inclusion of the gender dimension in their research design. I think, yes, we are aware of that, and I heard also from my colleagues here that we are aware of that, but more can be done. So what can be done is to better inform our review panels and also the scientists who write proposals to take care of these. And what I would maybe like DFG to do better is, and we're actually looking into that, to include further dimensions of diversity in our practices. So like social background, national ethnic background, sexual orientation, and so forth, and of course intersecting aspects of these. So this gives me the opportunity to say something that together with SGCI and the Organization for Women in Science for the Developing World, we are going to deal with that and to start a conversation on that. We commissioned a paper, and we're going to present that later on with the SGCI as well, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. And finally, Maha.
Thanks, Marcus. Well, there are several questions, very interesting, like how we include the gender dimension in research. I guess this is applicable according to the kind of project. You cannot include gender dimension in each and every project. It depends on applicability. For example, like when we do like a study on gene, then the gender dimension has to be there. And also from my experience, like for example, we do like evaluation of projects internally in the same organization and internationally. One of the conditions of the international approval of proposal, it has to be, lady has to be represented in research. I mean, as a co-PI or a PI, so they have to be included as long as they want. So you don't include names. It's just like when they are, it is applicable again. So it is, after all, the excellence of research. It's not including every, it's the talented and the related people and the related questions in terms of dimensions of gender in research. So if the question including ladies or gender, then we should include them naturally. And if the question is the talented, whether man or woman, would be included. This is one of my answer or my feeling.
And the challenge?
Yeah.
And what would you do differently?
Well, we include them if they are the talented in this field. For example, the proposal in a field where there is talented people, then they should be included, and this is part of the evaluation. There were some interesting questions from the area session and this session as well, which I heard from you, my dear. it's sad that we came to the point that scientists, we used to look up at scientists, and now because they don't promote, they stay or frozen, they stay in lower position. So you don't look up them. If you tell your kids, do you want to be a scientist? They don't look at that up. We used to do that in the past. I still look at that up. But I think we need to allow them to go to decision making. And there's some examples. I have to mention again the booklet, our booklet here, the blue booklet, I'm sorry. There are examples by several countries. They are not, I can't say that the best practice, but they are good examples. We can learn from the mutual learning. There are some examples, they place those ladies as role models and advertise them. So young generation will look up at them again. We need talented people. We don't want to lose people. Any good research, as Mike said in one of his presentations, any good science in anywhere will help the whole of the world. We don't want to lose those good people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maha. So thank you, colleagues, very much for your interaction in this panel discussion. For me, the key word that comes out of our discussion is evidence. Evidence that must really help us in making the right decisions across all our activities that we intend to do. Again, thank you very much. And to our panelists.
Nous allons suspendre la séance pour la pause café. Donc, je pense qu'on a retenu que la pause va durer que 10 minutes. Donc, nous vous demandons de revenir en salle avec vos tasses de café ou de thé si vous le désirez. Donc, nous allons, dans 10 minutes, in 10 minutes. 10 minutes at 4 past 10. 5 past 5. Past 5. 4 past 5, sorry.